Y'all ready?
Yes, sir.
A couple of things. Can I get the attorneys to approach? Any other matters we need to discuss before we begin today?
Yes, sir. We have, before we put witnesses on scene, we have several stipulations between the parties that the state has marked. They're written and they're marked, and I'd like to read them into the record, and then I can begin calling my witness.
All right, that's fine. Before you do that, while you're getting ready, for purposes of the record, let me announce that based on the motion by the defense at close of testimony on Friday, I have asked that media remove the camera that was directed to the defense table as well as the microphone. So the only media camera, video camera, is located in the back of the courtroom. There is still a still camera to my left.
Yes, sir.
All right. And all the other orders and requirements that I have put in place remain in effect, including 2 more that I signed this morning that I don't expect are going to come into play today. All right.
And have these orders that you signed been distributed to the media?
They have been, he was doing that while I was giving them to you, but I don't know if media in here got them yet.
What they cover will not be any of the witnesses today,
All right.
so we should be okay to proceed and we'll cover it
All right.
as we go.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, there are several stipulations between the parties. State's Exhibit 236, and we have marked in between court reporter, so there will be numbers in between, but is a stipulation of fact regarding GBI DFI, which is Digital Forensic Investigator Garrett Morton. And that just states that the Digital Forensic Investigator Garrett Morton at the GBI Cyber Center conducted a forensic enhancement of both the UFI video from the residence at B32, also known as the dumpster video, and the video from UGPD trail camera located outside of Building S. The enhancements have been admitted, and one hasn't been admitted yet, and one has been admitted, so I'll fill that out as we go. And I'll circle back to the court, but both enhancements one has already been admitted, and you saw that it was part of a global thumb drive with Detective Morris, where the UFI video from the dumpster had been slowed down, and I'll put that exhibit number in here. The trail cam video is coming up this afternoon, and I'll put that in here to complete this record. So that stipulation has been signed by counsel for the defendant and counsel for the state.
And Judge, the only thing that I would add to that is that subject to our objections prior. I think that's just about the enhancement to prevent the witness from having to come in and testify.
Previous objection is noted for the record.
The next stipulation of fact is a stipulation of fact regarding Special Agent Thomas Haas, and that's H-A-A-S, of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. This stipulation is marked State's Exhibit 239, and that stipulation is that on February 22nd, 2024 at 10 p.m., Special Agent Haas delivered a thumb drive marked and entered into evidence in State's Exhibit 242 at trial, so that's in my right hand right now, and I'll move to admit 242, to Sergeant Tim Stewart of the Athens Clarke County Police Department. This thumb drive has 24 digital images of photographs taken by Special Agent Daniela Stewart of a latent print impression seen on Laken Riley's cellular telephone. These digital images started with DES 566 and ended with ended with image DES 589. Furthermore, on February 23rd at 2024 at 4:21 p.m., so on the 23rd day of February at 4:21 p.m., Special Agent Haas obtained a consent form from Argenis Ibarra, and that's A-R-G-E-N-I-S, Ibarra, to collect a sample of his DNA. Special Agent Haas swabbed Argenis Ibarra at the Athens Clarke County Police Department and then sealed the swabs. The swabs were transported to the GBI laboratory for analysis. The swabs of Argenis Ibarra are marked and entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 241, and Argenis Ibarra's consent form is marked and entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 240, and again, this stipulation is marked State's Exhibit 239. So at this time, the state would move to admit 239, 240, 241, and 242.
We have no objection to those, Your Honor.
Other than to clarify that this does not waive our job
Noted. Let me make sure, so this is a new 140 and 141, because I've got a
Did it say one? I meant to say two.
Okay,
Two. I said two. Okay.
you did say two.
239, 240, 241, and 242.
Okay. Thank you.
And then finally for this morning, that there will be additional stipulations to come, but for this morning, this is the last one. It's been marked State's Exhibit 237 for the record, and it is a stipulation of fact between the parties regarding the prior testimony on October 11th, 2024 of ACC PD Sergeant Timothy Johnson. Sergeant Timothy Johnson testified on October 11th, 2024 at the motions to suppress in the above referenced case. All parties hereby agree to admit his testimony from that hearing and the exhibits that were introduced during his testimony at that hearing into evidence at this trial for the fact finder to consider. The testimony of Sergeant Johnson from the motion to suppress will be made part of this trial record. Signed by counsel for the defendant, signed by the state, and we would move to admit States 37. 237. Behind States 237 is States Exhibit 238. And States Exhibit 238 is a transcript from that October 11th, 2024 hearing where Officer Johnson testified, and it's isolated just to Officer Johnson's direct, cross, redirect, recross, and the exhibits that he entered at that motions hearing. So we've agreed to adopt that transcript, and Sergeant Johnson will not be called as a witness in this trial because we've adopted his prior testimony.
No objection and an agreement. Just to clarify, for the defense not stipulated the accuracy of his testimony, but we do agree that he doesn't need to come and re-say everything he's already said.
Very well. Noted, and those will be admitted.
State calls Sergeant Joshua Epps.
Got any more blank sheets on there? Evidence sheets?
Yes, sir.
What happened?
If you could raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you will give today in the matter of the state of Georgia versus Jose Ibarra will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Please take a seat, state and spell your first and last name.
Joshua Epps, Joshua. Last name's Epps, EPPS.
Where do you work?
University of Georgia Police Department.
How long have you worked there?
Roughly 6.5, almost 7 years.
What are your duties and responsibilities?
I'm a patrol sergeant, so I supervise roughly 12 to 14 patrol officers, as well as I'm on the bomb team. I'm a certified bomb technician, and I'm on a special response team, which is kind of like SWAT or active shooter response.
Were you called to an apartment complex at 2085 Millage Avenue in Athens, Clark County, Georgia, on the 23rd day of February 2024?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell the court at about what time did you get called there?
Roughly 8:32 in the morning.
Who called you there?
Tim Johnson requested that through a radio system for a UGA police officer, and I was close by.
Who does he work for?
Athens Clark County Police Department.
How long did it take you to get on scene?
Maybe 5 minutes. I was in the 5 Points area, so I wasn't far away.
When you responded, were you in uniform as you are today?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you respond in a marked patrol car?
Yes, ma'am.
When you responded, were you wearing a body cam video?
Yes, ma'am.
And was it recording?
Yes, ma'am.
When you got there, who, if anyone, did you meet with?
I met with Tim Johnson, and I believe there was maybe 1 or 2 other Athens Clark County officers on scene as well.
And was there an individual there who had been detained?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that individual's name?
Diego
What's his last name?
Ibarra. Yes, ma'am.
And did you have the opportunity to interact with Diego Ibarra that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have the opportunity to observe Diego Ibarra that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And if you could tell the court approximately how long were you with Diego Ibarra that day?
That day, several hours, probably upwards of 5 hours.
And without telling us what he said, did you ask Diego Ibarra questions?
Yes.
Did he answer your questions?
Yes.
And for the record, in what language were you communicating with Diego Ibarra?
I was using a translator to speak Spanish to him. I can't speak Spanish, so I was speaking with one of my Spanish-speaking officers who was relaying the questions to him.
At some point, did you call 2 Spanish-speaking officers out?
Yes, ma'am.
Who are those officers? What are their names?
The first one was Mason Bridges, he's a corporal, and the second one was Rafael Sayan, he's a corporal as well.
Could you spell Corporal Sayan's last name for Madam Court Reporter?
Sayan.
And are both of those individuals native speakers?
Yes.
Of Spanish?
Yes.
So they were helping you translate?
Correct.
I want to approach, I don't have to ask that anymore. One moment. I'm going to approach and hand you a few things. First, I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 177. Do you recognize 177?
Yes, ma'am.
What is it?
My body camera footage.
Have you seen it prior to today?
Yes, ma'am.
Is a fair and accurate recording of your body cam footage on the 23rd day of February 2024 at the apartment complex that we just discussed?
Yes, ma'am.
State would move to admit States 177 and request permission to publish parts of it.
Your Honor, I'm gonna have to object to hearsay. Unlike other body camera we've seen in this video, we have, I would say, a contested witness, Diego Ibarra, and then later Argenis Ibarra giving statements. To the extent that those statements are on the body cam, we have to object.
What we could do, Your Honor, we don't intend to offer the statements, the content of those statements until and after those witnesses testify. So at this time, we can play those portions of the body cam on mute. So that we are just offering this part of the body cam for the images that you see, and we don't have to play the audio. The only time we intend to play a part of the audio for State's Exhibit 177 is with the next witness who's going to talk about statements made by this defendant at the scene, which will be a statement made of a defendant, which is not hearsay.
Very well. It will be admitted for that purpose and with those restrictions at this time.
And so I'll mute it when we're talking to the other 2 residents. The audio will come back in when this officer enters the residence. So if at any time, if you feel like I have violated that stipulation, I would just ask that you make a contemporaneous objection so we can handle it.
Yes.
Thank you. Handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 178 through 194. I'm gonna have you look at all of those and then I'll ask you some questions. Do you recognize those documents?
Yes, ma'am.
What are they?
They're photos that were taken on scene that day of different individuals on scene.
Are those photos that you took that day of, first of all, Diego Ibarra?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there also a photo of Argenis Ibarra?
Yes, ma'am.
And are there photographs of Jose Ibarra?
Yes, ma'am.
And do all of those photographs, State's Exhibit 178 to 194, do they all accurately depict those 3 individuals as you saw them on February 23rd of 2024?
Yes, ma'am.
State would move to admit States 178 through 194, request permission to publish.
No objection.
They're admitted, you may.
I'm going to play part of States 177, and for the record, Sergeant, and for counsel, and for the court, we are going to use the timer at the top right corner of your video to discuss any timestamps on the video. Is that timer in UTC?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is UTC?
It's 24-hour time.
And at 13:36 is when your video starts. Would that be what time in Eastern Standard Time?
1336 would be 136, I believe.
Right, that's UTC.
Right. Oh,
So what time did you get on the seat?
Okay, sorry, 8:32.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So 1336 UTC is 8:36.
8:36. Yes, ma'am.
AM
AM.
in Eastern Standard Time, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just so we have that straight. Your Honor, if you could toggle over, we're going to play a little bit of 177, and for the record, it's going to be muted, so there'll be no sound for the first parts of it until this officer enters, and I'll clear the record up for that. Oh, you know what? It's not plugged in, so it is there. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to make sure it's muted. So since 177, the very first video that we're playing, is on mute, tell the court what we're looking at here.
I'm arriving on scene initially. I'm about to meet with Sergeant Tim Johnson, Athens County Police Department.
That individual we see in the frame at 1337, who's that?
That is Sergeant Tim Johnson. I can't remember the name of the other officer in the background, and that is Diego in the red sweatshirt.
And what apartment number is Diego standing out front of?
D126.
Does Sergeant Johnson show you an image at some point in this encounter with him?
Yes, right now. He's showing me a still frame image from video that they had recovered that I didn't have at that time.
And that still frame image, do we see it in your screen at 1337?
Yes, ma'am, on the phone.
And was that an image taken from a dumpster nearby?
Yes.
So he shows you that image, and then what do you do?
This is news to me. I was coming on shift roughly maybe an hour before this. So I relayed that to my superiors who were about to pull up, coincidentally, and then explained to them that, hey, they've got footage. At that time, I was not aware that they had already been aware of that footage.
The footage that was shown to you by Sergeant Johnson, what, if anything, was significant about it to you, and then what you were observing for yourself on Diego Ibarra?
At first, videoing it or reviewing the video, the still frame photo, Sergeant Johnson informs me that the image shows a male holding a hat or having a black Adidas hat, and then he informs me that I couldn't necessarily see from that distance till I get closer to Diego, but that Diego is wearing an identical hat, a black Adidas flatbill hat.
Did you make any observations about the hat that Diego was wearing?
Once I got closer, yes, I noticed on the back what I believe to be dirt on the brim.
And was that significant to you?
Yes.
Why?
Because I was on scene when we located Laken the day prior. She did have a lot of dirt, mulch, and things like that on her body. And I felt that if an individual was wearing that hat and was touching Laken in that manner, dirt could have been transferred to the hat by moving the hat.
So I'm going to fast forward a little bit for the record. At some point, do you begin talking to Diego Ibarra through your interpreter?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
And how would you describe Diego Ibarra's demeanor with you and with you?
He's compliant. He's not posing any issues. Obviously, there's a block there through communication, but based off his physical mannerisms, I'm not really getting any deceptive behavior. per se. I was aware at this point he did provide a fake green card, so he was detained for that.
Right.
He seemed to understand that we were detaining him for an investigative purpose. There appeared to be good rapport between him and officers, especially with Officer Bridges there, who you see.
If you could, do you have the pointer in front of you?
I'm not sure if I do.
Oh, here we go.
Thank you.
Point out to the court at 1342 in your muted video that we're playing. Where's Officer Bridges?
He's right here in an identical uniform that I'm wearing.
All right. And the one closest to Diego in this frame?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead. So you talked to him at some point. At some point, do you decide to obtain a search warrant for the apartment and to freeze the apartment?
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about that process.
Well, based on the fact that he was wearing that hat, the time frame that Tim Johnson encountered him was within 24 hours of the murder. He was walking back towards the general direction of campus, which was concerning as well. He somewhat matched the description of the male seen in that photo, discarding of what I later learned was evidence found in that dumpster.
And specific what evidence?
A sweater or a pullover of some sort with blood on it
Okay.
and hair.
Okay. And did you ever see that evidence, or you were just informed of that?
No, it was picked up throughout the middle of the night. I was there all day the day before. They sent me home to get a sleep cycle, and I
Okay.
was the supervisor this day.
All right.
So I never saw the evidence throughout the night.
All right, go ahead.
And
What
then
about the proximity from the dumpster to Laken Riley's body?
the dumpster to Laken Riley's body, probably rough estimate 500 yards.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So at some point, when you're with Diego Ibarra and you decide to get the search warrant, first of all, how do you communicate that to get the search warrant?
I go and talk to my superiors and I ask them, because they're maybe 20, 30 yards away in the parking lot at another vehicle discussing. I think they were talking to some GBI agents and other agency partners. And I asked for clarification of, at this point I gained knowledge there were other individuals inside the apartment. I wanted to start getting resources in and confirming that yes, we are going to go ahead and surround it. A warrant's going to be sought, and I need other translators here because from what I'm gathering, no one else speaks English inside the apartment.
And how many other individuals did you believe to be inside the apartment?
At this time, 3.
And could you see them from where you're standing?
No, not without being intrusive of sticking my face up to that window, which we didn't do. One, for an officer safety standpoint, but also, I didn't have a warrant at that point yet.
Do you see the window? You said the window. Can you point the window out? Is
Yes.
That, and that's again 1342. Is that the window to D126?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I'm going to roll a little more. At some point, do you start asking Diego questions about whether he has any injuries?
Eventually, yes, I did.
And do you take pictures of him, and do you see parts of his body?
Correct. Yes, I did.
Going to play the video first and then show you some photos. First of all, did you you mentioned to us that there was a fake ID, so you knew he had given a fake ID. Tell us a little bit of that process.
I didn't obtain it myself. It was provided to Sergeant Johnson when he located him and was identifying him. Sergeant Johnson provided it to me and stated, if you look at it, there's 2 different dates of birth listed. There was one vertically on the side and then one listed with the rest of his identification information.
So did you agree with Sergeant Johnson's assessment that this was not a valid form of government identification?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to go to, and still muted. About 1358 on States Exhibit 177. What are we looking at here now at 1358?
I believe at this point my captain, Seth Robinson, was interested in seeing his hands.
And
asked him to
does he show
pull.
you his hands?
Yes. So Captain Robinson, I believe, asked Officer Bridges to relay to him to please, show us your hands, and he complied.
Okay.
But put his hands out.
And did you see his hands?
I did.
Did you see any injuries to his hands?
No.
At 1359, what are we seeing Diego Ibarra do?
He was asked about, I believe they were asking this, if he could take his jacket off, and they were looking at tattoos as well as trying to make observations of any other potential injuries.
And
he,
go ahead.
and he takes his jacket off and becomes, I don't know exactly what he says. He starts kind of ranting a little bit and pulls his shirt up and shows us his stomach and his side tattoo.
And do you see any injuries on his stomach?
From my vantage point, no, I did not.
And if you had seen any injuries, would you have documented them?
Yes.
Okay. So, may we toggle over, Your Honor? States 178, what are we looking at there?
That is a picture of Diego.
And do we see the hat he's wearing in this image?
Yes.
Is that the black Adidas hat that you've already described?
Yes, ma'am.
States 179. Well, who is that?
That's Diego.
Okay, and on his face, does he have any tattoos?
He does. He has a teardrop tattoo on his right eye, kind of off to the side there. It's a little hard to see if you zoomed in, but we identified as potential gang affiliation
Can you
tattoo.
Can you point to that on
Yes.
the right side for 179? Okay. So what that image is, or that mark on his face that states 179, was that an injury?
No, it's a tattoo.
All right, thank you. States 180,
Again, it's Diego.
and do you see a tattoo on his neck?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, please point to that. 182,
Diego again.
okay, does he have tattoos on the back of his neck?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you please point to those? 183,
It's a close-up of the picture we just looked at.
and in 183, can you actually see the rest of the hat?
You can, yes.
Okay. 184,
Rib cage tattoo. I'm not sure what the design was.
so tattoos, but did you observe any injuries?
No.
At some point while you are there, Sergeant, and approximately how long are you at this apartment complex that day?
All day, from 8:32 in the morning, and I don't think I was released till probably 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
All right, I'm gonna go back to a different section of your video. And again, it's played on mute. We are now at 1434 in the top count for the record. So that would be 9:38 a.m. Am I right about that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. At 9:38 a.m., we see an individual in a yellow shirt. Can you please point to that person first of all? And who is that person?
That is a brother Arhenis, either Arhemis or Arhenis Ibarra.
And how did this person appear in this video? What happened?
He, while speaking with Diego and waiting for resources and other things, he walked out with a trash bag, like a 5-gallon plastic white trash bag that you would buy at Kroger.
Was he detained as well?
Yes,
And did you photograph him that day?
we did.
And I don't need to toggle over, but states 185, who is that?
That's our Hennis.
At some point, did you obtain consent to enter the apartment from Arhenis?
Yes,
And did you in fact enter the apartment?
I did.
What was your purpose of entering the apartment?
Well, he informed us that something was on the stove and that he was very adamant about going in to turn the stove off, I believe because of a fire hazard. So that was what we asked for consent to do.
And prior to going in, did you look to see if there are residents inside?
I did what we call a threshold evaluation, so I kind of peeked around from an angle because the door was already open. When Arhenis left, he left the door open. So I could kind of see what the environment inside looked like. And when I didn't see any obvious threats, that's when I got closer to the doorway.
In States 177, we're now playing the second video for the record, and we're at 1442. Could you show the court where the open door is
Yes.
in the frame? All right. I'm going to fast forward a little bit to the time where you made entry. And at this point, I am going to play, so we're at 1455 for the record, and I am going to play this video with volume because there's no statements of individuals. But the officers, and there is no confrontation issue here. But now our video is not working. Our audio is not working. There we go.
And that's back by the bedroom. I don't know if that's an exigency for me to go in there for a suit. It's just a normal thing. I'd rather go into the other. That's true. Yeah. Should we? I'll do it. There's a guy right here. There's a guy right here. Yeah. Hola. 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 Policia. Manos, hey. Policia, manos. He said he left some on the stove, so I was gonna try and cut it off, but hey, I need you to translate one at a time. Come here. Come to me. Come here. For you. Tell him I need to see his hands. I need to see his hands. Tell him to slowly get out. Ask him to get anybody else. That's a match, man. Alright, see slowly. For me. There's nobody else in here? No. He said no.
Okay, I'm gonna pause it at 14:58 for the record. Were there people inside the apartment?
Yes.
How many?
2.
What were they doing?
Laying in bed.
Could you see their hands or their bodies?
No.
You had Bridges translate for you at some point, and when you went in, we could see a light. Were you holding a flashlight in your hand?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Were there in fact beans on the stove?
There were in
Okay.
a crock pot, the ceramic part of a crock pot.
All right. And you turned those off?
I tried.
The individual, first of all, the 2 individuals was one male and one was female.
Correct.
Okay. The female, what was her name?
Her name was Rosbely, and I can't remember her last name at the moment.
The other male that was in the apartment, what is his name?
Jose Ibarra.
And do you see that person that you pulled out of the apartment at 14:58 in this screen?
Yes, you do.
And what color clothing is he wearing?
Red shirt, black shorts, and like black and red sandals.
And the person that you pulled out of the apartment on the 23rd day of February 2024, do you see him in the courtroom today?
I do.
Please point to him and describe an article of clothing that he's wearing for the record.
He's wearing a striped button-down shirt.
May the record reflect the witnesses identified the defendant.
It will.
Did you at some point have the opportunity to observe Jose Ibarra, the defendant, on scene?
Yes.
How close were you at times to Jose Ibarra?
Your normal conversation distance, maybe a foot and a half.
Did you observe any injuries to Jose Ibarra?
I did.
What injuries did you observe?
While speaking to him, I noticed on his right arm, his bicep, there was a scratch, which I identified as a potential defensive wound. On his left arm, he had a forearm scratch that was very similar, which in my mind looked like fingernail scratches to me. While he was sitting there speaking to us, I also noticed on his left wrist, just below the palm, he had a puncture, maybe a half an inch wide, that through my experiences of playing sports in high school and receiving the same injury from fingernails in football, I could see like wet flesh, like almost like it was fresh. It wasn't very old, possibly still irritated. And as he moved his wrists, when I was looking at them closely, I could actually see the liquid, or I guess body fluids that would be in that cut, kind of reflecting with light.
Did you observe, I'm going to publish a few of the photos. Court, would you please toggle over it, Your Honor? States 186, who is that?
That's Jose Ibarra.
And how would you describe his beard and mustache situation?
It's thicker than Diego's, if I remember correctly. Not well maintained. He had sort of a neck beard. Wasn't very long, but it was definitely an established beard. I wouldn't consider it like a 5 o'clock shadow.
Did Jose Ibarra have any tattoos on his neck?
No.
As far as height and weight differentials, you were with both Jose Ibarra and Diego Ibarra?
Correct.
How would you describe their height and weight differential?
Jose at the time weighed more through my observations and was shorter.
And when you say at the time, does he look thinner in court today?
He does.
Okay. Is that the way he looked on February 23rd as far as weight? When I say he, I mean Jose.
No.
States 188, what's that?
That is the back of Jose's head.
187?
That is a close-up picture of Jose's mouth and lips. We were concerned. It looked like his lips were red and irritated.
189?
A side profile picture. That's the right arm with a scratch.
191?
That would be the left lower wrist, forearm area with a scratch. as well as the palm.
192.
That is his left palm that had some bruising on the thumb palm area, and if you kind of look below that area, you'll see an irritated red area, which is where I saw that fingernail puncture mark.
Okay, the one that was pussing or oozing, you said?
Yeah, it was.
Could you please point to that in 192? At the middle of the screen, thank you.
Right.
193.
That's another picture of his right arm with a tattoo, but also you can see the fingernail scratch.
And 194.
That is a scratch on his forearm.
At some point, did you question Jose Ibarra about his injuries?
I used a translator, yes, we did.
Who was that translator?
That was Officer or Corporal Raphael Sayan.
And is that the individual, Raphael Sayan? Did we just see him in now 1519 in your body cam video? Hold on, I'll back it up a little bit. Is that Raphael Sayan?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And may I have one moment with counsel?
Yes.
Sergeant Epps, at this point in your day, how would you describe the legal status of Jose Ibarra?
He's detained.
And in that detention, did Officer Sayan, and did you ask Officer Sayan to advise him that he had been detained?
Correct, yes we did.
And did you ask Officer Sayan to advise him that he was not under arrest?
Yes we did.
And did you ask Officer Sayan to advise them that you were obtaining a search warrant for their apartment?
We did.
Okay. So during this detention of the defendant, first of all, tell me, were they allowed to move freely around in y'all's presence?
Yes, I think mainly Rosbely was standing up the whole time. She was walking around freely. They were talking to each other. They started smoking cigarettes. We heard people laughing. I even made the comment to my officers of let's make sure we're listening to what they're saying in case we get some utterances. But so yeah, we weren't restricting their rights to talk to each other or anything like that.
And who specifically did you see smoking?
I believe at one point I did see Jose smoking a cigarette.
So he was allowed to smoke a cigarette.
Yes.
Is he handcuffed in any way?
No.
Okay. And there are conversations amongst, I guess the four of them were talking amongst one another? You said you heard laughter about how many times?
I only heard it probably once, and it was from, I think, Rosbely, maybe Arhenis. I didn't know what they were talking about. From what I understand, talking to Officer Sayan, they thought it was amusing how many police cars we had, and that the mobile command center was showing up in the parking lot.
During this time period, did you ask Officer Sayan to ask Jose Ibarra how he got his injuries?
We did.
Okay. And was that captured on your body cam video?
I believe so.
And if I were to continue to play this, would that be the part that we're about to see?
Yes,
what I'm going to do is wait till Officer Sayan is here so he can translate what was being said. And I think, Your Honor, that completes my questions except for this. Sergeant Epps, did you ever search the apartment yourself that day?
No.
And who did the search of the apartment?
To my knowledge, GBI agents.
Did you arrest the defendant for anything that day?
No.
And at some point during this day, did you learn or did you see him get arrested by ACCPD for a bench warrant that was outstanding for Athens, Clark County?
Yes, ma'am.
And Your Honor, all of that evidence has already been admitted through the stipulation of Sergeant Johnson. Attached to Sergeant Johnson's stipulation are the exhibits from his testimony, including the bench warrant that this defendant was arrested for that day. So I just want to close the record on that. and I'll pass the witness.
Good morning, officer.
Good morning.
When you first saw Diego Ibarra, he was wearing the hat that you had seen your suspect wearing in the picture.
Correct.
And you had a chance to observe the hat as you testified to.
Right.
And how far away were you when you observed the hat on Mr. Ibarra, Diego Ibarra?
On Diego,
Yes.
initially or throughout my interactions with him?
What's the closest you got to him, I guess?
Very close, a foot away.
And when you looked at the hat, on the back of the hat, on the brim, you could see dirt.
What I believe to be dirt.
Is it fair to say that it looked like red clay dirt?
I think initially that's what I thought it was.
You also at some point saw that Diego had a UGA employment ID.
Correct.
And that ID allows him access to some of UGA's campus, right?
Yes, yeah.
And you were informed that Diego was first seen walking towards the Rogers Road bus stop.
Correct.
And that bus stop is specifically a place where UGA buses can come and pick up students, right?
Yes.
And you also were able to confirm through investigating your internal UGA database that Diego did work for a UGA department, is that correct?
Correct.
He worked for the Bolton Dining Commons?
There were some issues figuring out exactly where, because it doesn't necessarily say their place of employment. It'll say he's in that division. So once we kind of figured that out later on. But yeah, we knew he was an employee for dining.
So you did eventually establish that he worked at Bolton Dining Commons?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You also noticed that Diego was wearing dark, long pants.
Yes.
And we know that the dark, long pants are similar to the ones that were in the video of the man walking toward the dumpster.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
When you first saw Jose Ibarra, he was asleep, right?
Yes, I believe so.
You had trouble waking him up.
I wouldn't say trouble waking him up. I just had to talk very loudly.
Okay. And you also had to kind of rap on the door frame.
Yeah, to wake him up.
And you would agree with me, he was a little slow initially getting up and out of bed.
Correct.
But you believe that was because he was confused having just woken up.
I didn't know what he was doing. I couldn't see his head. I said there's a guy asleep right here because he was in a sleep posture under covers. I couldn't see his hands. So he was slow. I could see the possible confusion because I'm not very good at speaking Spanish. I'm sure that to a Spanish speaker I have a foreign accent like a Spanish speaker may have a foreign accent with English to me. So that's why I could see why there may have been some confusion for him.
But to be clear, you felt that his slowness to respond was due to your Spanish speaking, his having woken up, rather than passively resisting.
Possibly, yes.
And that's what you put in your report.
Yes.
When Officer Bridges came in and delivered the command to show his hands, Mr. Ibarra immediately put his hands in the air.
Correct.
Now, when you detained all the individuals, they were detained outside of the apartment.
Correct.
And it was February morning, right?
Correct.
It was a little bit chilly.
It was kind of similar, honestly, if I remember correctly, the weather now, about 50s, 60s.
At some point, Rosbely asked to get a jacket, and she was cold.
As I was leaving the apartment, I was informed by, I believe, Bridges, or maybe it was an Athens officer, that she wanted a jacket.
When you observed the markings on Jose Ibarra, you did not observe any blood in the wounds.
I didn't see blood, no.
They did not appear deep enough to draw blood.
No, the only one that I think could reasonably draw blood, which obviously the scratches that I wouldn't say would be dripping blood, there could have been blood present, but that left puncture on the wrist that I described, I could see there being more blood coming from that than his scratches.
Did you observe any scabbing?
No.
Okay. Just one moment, please. I don't have any further questions at this time.
Redirect.
No, sir.
Can you excuse?
Yes, sir.
No objection.
Excuse.
Thanks, sir.
call your next witness?
State calls Raphael Sayan. You can raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you will give today will be, in the matter of the state of Georgia versus Jose Ibarra, will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Please take a seat, state and spell your first and last name.
My first name is Raphael, R-A-F-A-E-L, and my last name is Sayan, S-A-Y-A-N.
Where do you work?
University of Georgia Police Department.
How long have you worked there?
5 years.
What are your current duties and responsibilities?
I'm a patrol corporal, and my duties are to train new officers so they're ready to be on the road.
As a patrol corporal, you wear a uniform like you are today in court,
Yes, ma'am.
and do you also drive a patrol car
Yes.
and wear body cam videos as well?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to ask you, Corporal Sayan, can you speak Spanish?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
How do you know how to speak Spanish?
I've been speaking it for 34 years. I'm bilingual, fluent. Parents are from Peru. Went to Peru many, many times. My wife is also Latina, so we speak Spanish at home very often.
Okay. And your wife is from what country?
Colombia.
Right. So you speak Spanish, and your parents are from Peru.
Correct, yes, ma'am.
And are you familiar with the South American type of dialect of people who speak Spanish?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Tell us a little bit about that.
South American Spanish,
Yes.
yeah, it's, well, it has its own dialect. It's very different from Central American Spanish and what I would call Mexican dialect too. So it's easy to pick up when you hear it, especially living within those communities for many, many years and growing up with it. But there is a different dialect to it.
Do you believe you're well versed in South American Spanish?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you read in Spanish and write in Spanish?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
And do you speak Spanish in your household still?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you working on February 23rd of 2024?
I was.
Did you get a call from Sergeant Epps and asked to come and help translate at an apartment complex?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And about what time did you get there?
I would say it was right before 9 in the morning, so 8 in the morning,
Okay.
right, 8:45-ish.
8:45-ish. When you got there, what were you asked to do?
Once I arrived, once they pulled everybody out of the apartment, I was requested to observe and to translate.
Did you do so?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
I want to ask you about all 4 individuals out there. First of all, did you have the opportunity to converse in Spanish with a Diego Ibarra?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Did you have the opportunity to converse in Spanish with a Rosbely Flores?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have the opportunity to converse in Spanish with Argenis Ibarra?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you have the opportunity to speak in Spanish to Jose Ibarra?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have any difficulties understanding their Spanish?
No.
Did they seem to have any difficulties understanding your Spanish?
By them responding to my questions and us conversing, I would say that no, they understood me very well.
The person named Jose Ibarra, did you question him that day and ask him some questions about injuries that were observed on him?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
What language did you ask him those questions?
It would be in Spanish.
And what language did he respond back to you?
In Spanish.
And at this point, before we get into the statements, Your Honor, just for the record, defense counsel has not filed for a Jackson Deno, and I'll let her take it from there.
We will not be raising a Jackson Deno issue at this time.
Thank you. When you were conversing or speaking with Jose Ibarra that day and asking him about injuries, about how close were you to him?
I would say roughly between 3 to 4 feet.
And prior to, and if you could sit a little into that microphone, thank you. Prior to you asking him questions about his injuries, were the 4 residents of that apartment allowed to kind of move around, and were they talking to one another?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, they were speaking to one another, laughing. Yeah.
And how would you describe the vibe between them and what was going on at this time?
It seemed very relaxed. There was a lot of laughing, giggling, especially when they were talking about how they were woken up, pulled out of the apartment, smoking. So I would say the vibe or the atmosphere was very relaxed and calm.
And may I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
All right, I'm showing you what's been already admitted as State's Exhibit 177, and have you seen it? And you know what, it's already admitted, so I'm going to show you something from it. Sorry, it's had it. But you have seen 177?
Yes, I have.
And what is it?
It's going to be axon footage.
From your conversation with Jose Ibarra
That's correct, yes.
on the 23rd day of February 2024?
Yes, ma'am. And it would be Sergeant Epps' axon footage.
Okay. So you had footage and he had footage, right?
Correct.
All right. And do you see yourself in this footage? I'm going to publish the 3rd video in States 177. Do you see yourself right there?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Oh, I'm sorry. We got to toggle over. And this may be a little difficult to do. Hopefully you're going to be able to hear it. But what I would like you to do for the record is translate to us exactly what you asked him and exactly what he said back to you. And if you have problems hearing it and you need to hear it again, just let me know and we'll rewind it.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Hold on a second. Well, we have no volume at all, so hold on just one moment. I'll start it over.
¿Cómo hablas?
Okay.
Yo pregunto, ¿por qué tú tienes las...
All right, I want to start it over. There we go.
Hola. Hola. Hazme un favor. ¿Puedes sacar las manos?
My friend, can you do me a favor?
All right, let's say that again.
My friend, can you do me a favor?
Okay, so you said, my friend, can you do me a favor?
Mm-hmm.
And why did you ask the question in that manner?
It's just my mannerisms when I speak Spanish. I'm very respectful to folks. It's just the way I was raised, and it's Latin American culture.
All right.
Sí, hombre, no puedo. ¿Cómo hablas? Yo pregunto, ¿por qué tú tienes las...
I asked him, I have a question, why, and then I point to to my left knuckle, why is this red?
Yo te pregunté un poco. ¿Por qué?
He responds by saying that because of the cold.
Because of the what?
The cold.
What happened to his arm? What happened there?
I asked him what happened there, and he,
And for the record, we're at 15:20 of the video, and he is pointing to his left arm?
it would be his right
Or
bicep.
his right arm, sorry.
Mhm.
I was a little backwards. His right bicep. Okay, and you asked what?
I asked what happened there, and he said that he had a scratch, but he didn't exactly explain from where or how.
Hace cuánto tiempo. What happened there? Keep it up. What happened there?
I asked him about another scratch on where his left wrist meets his left forearm. If you could actually just repeat that portion
I will.
right there.
Keep it up. What happened there?
I asked him what happened there.
Okay, what you said what?
What happened there? Pause it, please. He says, I don't have anything there, there's nothing there, and then he starts pointing at it again, saying that, oh, it's just a scratch.
Okay. So when he said that there was nothing there, could you see something there?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
What could you see?
It looked like I don't know exactly the time, but I could see there was still a little bit of pus in it.
Pus?
So it didn't look very old.
Okay.
But I could see that there was a scratch on his wrist. I asked him to raise up his sleeves.
Okay. Reading enough of the red knuckles to the bone. And the scratch over there is do you hit the face or anything? Was it that thing on the over? No.
I asked him, were you struck in the mouth? He responded to me that no, he was not struck in the mouth, and that it's the cold air on his lips, so he uses chapstick. I asked him to raise up his hair. I also asked him to raise up both sides of his hair.
What did you observe when he raised up his hair?
I could see that there was a red mark going across, like as if he had been wearing a hat. He explains to me that he wears a hat, a gorra, a hat, and continue.
What kind of hat does he wear?
I ask him what type of hat, and he motions over to Diego, who's sitting to the right of him, that it's a hat very similar to that one that was on Diego's head.
Thank you.
And does that complete your conversation with Jose Ibarra about his injuries?
Correct, yes ma'am.
I want to ask you, at some point, does he use the word for nail in Spanish?
Oh, no, he doesn't.
Okay. Do you use that word?
In Spanish?
Yes.
The nail, so the word in Spanish for nail, as in like a fingernail, would be, sorry, I apologize, I'm drawing a blank right now.
Yeah.
But it would be uña.
Okay.
But I didn't hear that.
Okay.
When he didn't respond that to me.
He did not.
Mhm.
What was the question that you asked with uña that he did not respond back to?
Well, I had asked him how did he receive those scratches, and he didn't give me a clear answer at all.
Hold on. Yeah, I know. Okay. I want to have you hear this one section, Corporal Sayan. Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Reading enough of the red knuckles to the bone. And the scratch over there is
Do you hit the face or anything?
was it that thing on the over?
Sports.
Sorry, there we go. We're back at 15:19. If you could just listen to this again.
What happened to his arm? What happened there? What happened there?
All right. Did you use the word uña in those questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay. What word did you use?
It sounds like I didn't really use a word. I asked what had happened there.
Okay.
Keep it up. What happened there?
And his answer to the specific one about the left wrist was what?
Well, at first he said where. I mean,
Okay.
the way it looked like he was acting as if there was nothing there, but I could clearly see there was a scratch.
Okay.
Mhm.
At first, that's what he said, where, and then
Mhm.
what?
And then he pointed at it, and again, he doesn't really tell me how he got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. One moment, Your Honor. One final thing. Corporal Sayan, the phrase in Spanish, yo tengo, what does that mean literally?
Yo tengo would exactly translate to I have.
That's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
This all occurred on February morning,
Yes, ma'am.
and I believe you said you arrived around 8:45 in the morning.
8:45-ish. Yeah.
And this was a little bit after that, but still in the morning.
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Ibarra was wearing a short sleeve shirt
Yes, he was.
and shorts
Yes.
and slides.
And I would say so.
And he didn't have any sort of jacket or other covering.
No, ma'am.
All right, just a moment. And when you asked him about a hat, and he gestures towards, Mr. Diego Ibarra, he doesn't say, I wore that hat. He says, I was wearing a hat like that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's what I heard.
All right. No further questions.
Redirect.
No, sir.
Can you be excused?
Yes, sir.
Any objections to that?
No objection.
You're excused. You call your next witness.
State Clause Special Agent Annie Mormon. If you could raise your right hand, please, ma'am. You swear affirm the testimony you will give today will be the truth, and the matter of State of Georgia versus Jose Ibarra will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Would you please take a seat, spell your first and last name.
My name's Annie Moorman, A-N-N-I-E, Moorman, M-O-O-R-M-A-N.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a special agent with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
How long have you worked for the GBI?
4 years.
What are your duties and responsibilities?
I currently serve as a crime scene specialist with the Region 11 GBI office.
What do you do as a crime scene specialist?
Collect evidence, process scenes, send evidence to the crime lab.
And tell the court a little bit about your training for your job.
Sure, so we participate in a GBI Special Academy, which is 13 weeks. And then on top of that, we participate in a lot of extensive training to become a crime scene specialist, which includes advanced training in blood stain pattern analysis, reconstruction of crime scenes and such.
Were you asked to assist the University of Georgia Police Department in searching an apartment on the 23rd day of February 2024?
Yes.
Could you tell the court what was the address of that location and about what time did you get there and what you did when you got there?
Sure. The address was 2085 South Millage Avenue, the Argo Apartments, apartment D126. I had been in that apartment complex from approximately 11 a.m. Helping do neighborhood canvasses. Specifically to search that apartment, we didn't start that until approximately 3:30 in the afternoon.
Tell us a little bit about the canvassing process. What was going on with the canvassing of the apartment and about what time did that start?
I believe it started around 10:30 or 11 a.m. There were many GBI agents on that property, probably somewhere between 40 and 50 of us. We had broken down into smaller groups to speak to each individual apartment occupant to try to get any sort of information we could.
And then at some point you turned your attention to searching the apartment.
Yes.
Prior to searching that apartment, was a search warrant obtained?
Yes, it was.
Tell the court, first of all, in general terms, describe the apartment, D-126.
Sure. The apartment was approximately 700 square feet, maybe 20 by 35 feet. It was one room, essentially. It was kind of an open space living area that had 2 beds and a couch with a small closet, a small kitchen in the northwest corner, and a bathroom in the northwest corner.
When you searched the apartment, did you take photographs?
Yes, I did.
And did you also do a crime scene sketch or a sketch of the apartment?
I did.
I'm going to hand you a series of photographs. They are marked for the record as states 195 through 235, with the exception of states 209 through 215 and 225 and 226. Those numbers will not be used. So handing you this stack, and then I'm going to ask you some questions.
Okay.
Do you recognize those items?
I do, yes.
The 235, can we start with that? What is it?
This is a crime scene sketch I created after searching the apartment.
Is that an accurate sketch of the apartment?
Yes.
So we moved to 235.
No objection.
235 submitted.
And then the remaining of the exhibits that I handed you, what are they?
These are photographs that I took during that search.
And do those photographs fairly and accurately depict the apartment and the items inside the apartment as you saw them on the 23rd day of February 2024?
Yes.
State would move to admit states exhibits 195 through 234, with the exception of 209 through 215, also accepting 225 to 226. Those numbers will not be used.
No objection.
Admitted.
And may I request permission to publish?
No.
I've set some gloves in front of you. I don't think you're gonna need them. I don't know, just in case if you need to use them, go ahead.
Okay.
First of all, in searching the apartment, let me come back and grab those exhibits. And I'll give you these if you might need them.
Okay, thank you.
And it's starting first with 235, could you tell the court what we're looking at here?
Sure, this is a sketch of the apartment, D-126 that I searched that day.
How many beds were in that apartment, and did you note them?
There were 2 queen-size beds along with a sofa.
Okay, where are they noted for the record? If you could use, there's a pointer, there should be a pointer next to you.
Am I pointing at this TV?
Yes, you
okay. Sure, so this is the west wall. There was a queen-size bed here with the head towards the kitchen. And then there was another queen-size bed located on the south wall here with the head towards the west wall, and a sofa here between the closet area and this bed.
Where's the front door in that image, 235 then?
The front door is here. It's catty-cornered in the apartment.
At the bottom of the
Yes,
the exhibit?
the southwest corner.
States 195, what are we looking at there?
This is the front door of the apartment here. You go into an alcove. There's an apartment on your left and an apartment on your right, and this is the door to D-126.
And that's the blue door that we see in States 195 for the record.
Yes.
States 197, what does that depict and where's that photograph taken from?
So this is taken from the doorway of apartment D126 looking into the apartment. This is the bed located on the west, the head of the bed is located on the west wall there. And this is the front of the apartment to the south.
199.
So this is looking into the apartment. This is the bed located along the west wall with the kitchen area here and the bathroom in the back right corner in the closet
And
area.
was this photograph taken from the perspective where you're actually standing at the front door?
Yes, the door is to my left here.
States 200.
So this, I'm standing in the entrance to the kitchen area, looking back at the front door. This is the south wall of the apartment with the queen size bed on the west wall and the other queen size bed here on the, I'm sorry, yes, that one.
States 200. 202.
Sure, I'm standing in the middle kind of the open living space, and this is the closet located in the apartment.
204.
This is the bathroom located in the northeast corner of the apartment.
206.
That's from inside the bathroom, the tub that was located in that bathroom in the apartment.
208.
That is the kitchen area located in the apartment.
Now, when you were in this apartment, first of all, how long did it take you to search the apartment?
I believe I was there for approximately 8 hours.
Were you looking for, well, what were you looking for?
A number of things that were listed on the search warrant, specific clothing, any sort of blood, any sort of blunt object that could have been used to create Ms. Riley's injuries.
For blood, how did you search for blood?
So we visually search for blood, anything that looks like it may be blood, or even if it doesn't necessarily look that way, if it just looks odd, then we can do tests to see if it is blood.
And did you find any items with blood inside that apartment?
No, we did not.
Did you at some point seize some gloves?
We did.
Tell me about the gloves and where were they and why did you take them?
So in the search of this kitchen area, specifically this left-hand top drawer, there were located 3, I guess what I would describe as utility type kitchen gloves, plastic in nature, looked like restaurant style, like you would use in a kitchen, gloves.
Showing you 216, what does that depict?
So upon opening the drawer, the gloves were located here. It's kind of dark, but you can see the outline of the gloves there.
Why were those gloves of interest to you?
Earlier in the day, officers had located gloves that had been described as looking sort of like these from a bush at the apartment complex.
Did you seize these gloves?
I did.
And when you seized them, how did you collect them?
They were collected and placed into an evidence bag.
And did you seal it?
Yes, I did.
And was it eventually transported to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation for analysis?
I transported it to the UGA Police Department and turned it over to their evidence personnel, Daniel Saunders.
And when you transported it to him, did you deliver it to him sealed?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked. Right here, sorry. As State's Exhibit 244 for the record. Do you recognize 244? If you could look inside that for me.
Would like me to remove it from the bag?
Yes. if you could, to look at it.
Yes.
Do you recognize those items inside the bag?
Yes.
What are they?
These are the gloves that I collected on the night of the 23rd, excuse me.
The statement moved to admit states 240, what is it? Sorry, 244. And request permission.
244 is admitted.
I'm just gonna take one of them out,
Okay.
all right? And then I'll put the rest back in. Okay. Those are the gloves. At some point, did you observe or see any electronic devices in the apartment?
I did, yes.
How many?
I believe there were 2 tablets and 7 cell phones that we seized.
I want to talk to you specifically about State's Exhibit 219. What does that depict?
So those were 2 cellular devices that we found and seized.
On what bed were these 2 devices? And I'm going to go back to your crime scene sketch for that. So the 2 devices that we see in State's Exhibit 219, going back to your crime scene sketch of 235, what bed were those devices seized from?
So they were on the bed along the west wall here at the head of this bed near the kitchen.
All right, thank you. And while you were searching this apartment, were 2 of the residents who resided inside that apartment outside?
Yes.
Who were those 2 individuals?
Rosbely, Flores, Bello, and Argenis.
If you could adjust your microphone a little bit
So
more
sorry.
closer, yes, just if you could scoot up a little bit, because
Sure.
when you speak, I'm having a hard time hearing you. And I need to make sure they can hear you over here as well. So those 2 individuals were who?
Rosbely, Flores, Bello, and Argenis Ibarra.
And those individuals were outside.
Yes.
At some point, did you gain permission from them, and did you identify electronic devices that belonged to both of those individuals?
Yes, we did.
Rosbely and Argenis.
Yes,
And were those devices inside the apartment as well?
they were.
With those devices, what did you do with the 2 devices that belonged to Argenis and Rosbely?
So I did not have a conversation with Rosbely, but there were additional agents on scene, Agent Cameron Karate and Special Agent in Charge Trent Hillsman, who had a conversation with Rosbely and determined which phones belonged to she and Argenis. Those phones were removed from the apartment, and they processed those phones on scene.
And did those 2 give y'all consent to process their phones?
They did.
Okay. Were they waiting for you all to finish your search?
Yes.
So how long were they waiting for you? Like how long? You told us you were there 8 hours, 9 hours?
Yes, I was there approximately 8 hours, from 3:30 in the afternoon till 11:30 at night.
At some point, did Rosbely identify 2 devices that belonged to Jose?
Yes.
And did you seize those 2 devices?
Yes, we did.
Are those 2 devices the 2 devices that we saw on the bed in the photograph that
They
we've just
are.
shown?
Yes.
I'm gonna object to hearsay as to others being identified.
Well, there won't be a confrontation issue because she's going to be our next witness. And I would offer that only for, to explain the officer's conduct about why she seized the device, but any confrontation issue will be cleared up by the next witness, or will be cured by the next witness.
So I will overrule the objection at this time. If it needs to be made later, I'll reconsider.
Yes, Judge.
Handing you now what has been marked as State's Exhibits 245 and 246. Ask that you recognize those 2 devices, or do you recognize those items?
I do, yes.
What are 245 and 246?
These are the cell phones that were located on that bed on the west wall of the apartment.
And are those the cell phones that you seized that evening?
Yes.
What did you tell us about the seizure of those two devices? But before I do that, I want to move to admit 245 and 246.
Your Honor, we're still maintaining our objections that have already been heard, motion to suppress, but subject to those objections, we don't have any other.
Those objections are noted, and I will admit it. 245, 246.
Tell us about the seizure of 245 and 246, these two cell phones.
So they were located, like I said earlier, on the bed along the west wall. We believed that exigent circumstances existed to seize those, even though they were not specifically written within the search warrant. We believed we would be covered because we would not be searching those at that time. We knew that search warrants would be obtained later to search those. We were fearful that had we left them, the phones could be destroyed in any type of manner. We were also worried about the evidence located on those phones possibly being disturbed. I'm sorry, my word just left me, but being able to be wiped should we not take those with us.
Could you put those two phones in airplane mode? Were you able to do that?
So we were not able to put them in airplane mode. We did not have access to them. We didn't know the codes to them and were not able to get into them.
And so if you were not able to get into them to put them in airplane mode, were you able to search those phones at all?
No.
How much clothing did you look through in that apartment?
There was a lot of clothing.
And did you look at all of it?
Yes.
And were you looking for specific items?
We were looking for specific items.
I'm going to show you an exhibit that I will link up with FBI agent. I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 247. Do you recognize the person and those items inside that exhibit?
Yes.
Okay. Who do you recognize in that exhibit?
So that is Mr. Ibarra.
Okay. And then Mr. Ibarra in this courtroom?
Jose, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Jose Ibarra.
And those items that you see in that image, were you looking for those items that evening in apartment D26?
Yes, we were.
Okay. I would move to admit 247, and I'll link it up with the next second witness.
Your Honor, my understanding is that is a photo that's derived from the forensic review of the phone. So I'm not certain. This witness says she wasn't able to search the phone. I don't think she's the proper witness to lay the foundation for it.
Well, that's why I'm going to complete the loop with Special Agent Hipkiss, but she's at least identified the defendant and the clothing that she was looking for. So I believe it's a proper thing to ask her about, and then I can, when Special Agent Hipkiss testifies, I can complete the loop of this photo.
Well, I will reconsider the admissibility once we hear the further testimony from another witness.
Thank you.
So I'm not admitting it at this time.
Okay. The items that we see in States 247, Jose Ibarra carrying and wearing, did you ever find those items inside your search of the apartment D126?
No, we did not.
I believe that's it, Your Honor. I'll pass the witness.
May I cross-examine?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Before you conducted a search of the apartment, you were involved in the neighborhood canvas.
I
Is that
was.
right? And without telling me what you said, you spoke with an individual named Jennifer Slonaker.
Yes.
And while you were speaking to Ms. Slonaker, another individual kind of voluntarily joined the conversation.
Correct.
And that individual was Stephanie Slayton.
Correct.
And while you were speaking with Ms. Slayton, you were up on the second floor balcony of building D in the apartment complex.
Yes.
So you were a balcony above where the police had secured the apartment residence below.
Yes.
And you and Ms. Slayton and Ms. Slonaker could occasionally hear snippets of conversation from below.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Slayton was acting very fearful, was she not?
Yes.
And she told you that she was fearful of.
Objection, hearsay.
Your Honor, this is not hearsay because we're not using it for the truth of the matter asserted, but for their state of mind.
Whose state of mind? Not of the declarant who's not present.
It's for the effect on the listener, Ms. Slayton, her state of mind.
But that Ms. Slayton is not present, so that makes it hearsay and not relevant what her state of mind is. Until they get the declarant here, that is hearsay.
Both.
Sustain the objection.
Okay, Your Honor, just one moment. I'll proffer that we are calling Ms. Slayton. She's under subpoena. We'll be here tomorrow. This is primarily for efficiency's sake. I just want to get some demeanor testimony and statements from Ms. Agent Mormon so we don't have to recall her.
The demeanor questions are appropriate. Anything that Ms. Slayton said, I maintain is hearsay. If Ms. Slayton takes the stand and denies saying those things, then they will have to recall this witness. But that's just that does not make these statements admissible. They have to call the declarant first.
The objection is still overruled, but I agree the demeanor questions are appropriate.
Okay. So after Ms. Slayton acted fearful, you ended up moving her across the street.
No, we did not move her across the street. We finished our interview with her there and then conducted a secondary interview when we found her across the street at the gas station.
And this was across the street from the apartment complex?
Yes.
And it was later that same morning?
Yes.
When, now let's turn into the search of the apartment. Basically, all of the apartment is one room, right?
Essentially barring the bathroom.
And you would agree with me that it was pretty messy when you arrived?
Fairly.
There were piles of clothes everywhere.
Yes.
The apartment only had one closet.
Correct.
And the closet was partially filled with some boxes and other detritus.
Correct.
Okay. And you spent 8 hours, you said, searching the apartment?
Yes.
At what time into that 8 hours did you notice the cell phones on the bed?
I guess we noticed them. I started at the front door with the search. We started at the end of the bed on the right-hand side as you walk in the door. And we were going through there were several pieces of luggage that were filled with clothing that we were going through. So it wasn't until I finished the search of all those clothes that we ran into the first cell phones on the floor next to that bed.
And what, was that an hour into your search? Can you estimate how long that was?
I would have to look at the timestamps on my photographs to be for sure, but it may be an hour or two.
And then you mentioned that you did some tests for blood. Can you explain what those tests are?
Sure, so it's a presumptive blood test. So it's a phenolphthalein presumptive blood test. There was only one area in the apartment that I questioned that looked like it could possibly be blood. When you take a sample of that substance, you add different chemicals to it, and if it were to show pink, then it confirms that it is an area of blood, and then if it does not turn pink, then it's not, and it did not.
Now, in the apartment, you would agree with me that there were 3 units somebody could sleep on?
Sure.
There was the couch on
and
the
two
right
beds.
side and 2 beds.
Yes.
And you were aware that there were 5 residents that lived in that house or apartment?
It's only aware of 4.
Okay. Were you aware that the queen side bed on the left side of the apartment was being shared?
On the left, are you talking about the west wall?
Yes.
Where we found the phones?
Yes.
I did not know if it was being shared.
No further questions.
Briefly, you had the opportunity to interview Ms. Slayton that morning, correct?
I did.
And without telling us anything that she said, did you observe her demeanor?
Yes.
Were you able to get close enough to her to see if you could smell or determined that she was under the influence of alcohol.
Yes.
What was your impression of her, of being, whether she was under the influence of alcohol at the time that you were talking to her?
I would say that she was. She smelled very strongly of alcohol.
And your test for blood, you did only one presumptive test in the apartment.
Yes.
Is the first part of the process a visual examination?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because what you see tells you information that you need.
So is there any way for you to like spray the entire apartment with something to see if there's blood, or do you actually look for blood first and then test it if you suspect it?
We actually look for it first.
With your eyes?
Mhm.
That's all I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else, Ms. Batch?
No, Your Honor.
Should she be excused?
Yes, sir.
No objection. Subject to recall for the police lady's judgment.
Take direction, if you would, from Ms. Ross.
Yes, sir. I'll bring her back if she's needed, and I'll keep in contact with her.
Very well. This is probably a good time to take a recess. We'll take 10 minutes. Before the next witness is called, let me announce that this next witness is not to be filmed or photographed. So I'm going to ask the video to turn away from this witness, and I've already spoken to the still photographer about that. All right? You may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. State calls Rosbely, Flores, Bello. And, Your Honor, we will also be using interpreter Carlos Flores.
All right. That's fine. If you'll raise your right hand, you swear that you will truthfully and accurately translate English to Spanish and Spanish to English to the best of your ability.
I did, Judge, to the best of my abilities.
And state your name, please.
Carlos T. Lares, L-A-R-E-S, and state certified court interpreter.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lares.
Thank you.
All right. Come on. You may have to bend it down some. All right.
Will you raise your right hand?
Levante, por favor, la mano derecha, como pueda.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to present in the state versus Jose Antonio Ibarra shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Juras decir la verdad, toda la verdad y únicamente la verdad en el caso del estado de Georgia contra Jose Ibarra, y lo jura por Dios.
Sí.
Yes.
Judge, can we just have just a second? We're just trying to figure out the interpreter situation so that it's not 4 different times of translation. I just like to explain to Mr. Ibarra.
That'd be fine. That'd be
How-
fine.
how-
Take a moment. You may continue.
Vamos a
Will you
proceder.
state your name for the record?
Para que conste en la acta. Rosbely Lisbel
Flores Bello.
Flores Bello.
And can you spell that?
Puedes deletrear tus nombres y apellidos.
R
R
O
O
S
S
B
B
E
E
L
L
I
I
E
E
L
L
I
E
S
S
B
perdón
B
B B
E
A
R
R
Flores
Flores
Bello.
Bello. Rosbeli. Second word Elis. Bar. Flores. Bello.
And where are you from, Miss Flores Bello?
Señora Flores Bello, ¿de dónde es usted?
Venezuela.
Venezuela.
And how long have you been here in the United States?
¿Cuánto tiempo ya tiene en los Estados Unidos?
Un año.
A year.
Un año y 5 meses.
A year and 5 months.
Okay, and when did you, what month did you come here?
¿En qué mes llegó usted aquí?
En septiembre del año pasado.
In September of last year.
And who did you come here with?
¿Y con quién aquí se mueve? ¿Con quién está?
Aquí ahorita.
Here right now?
And when you came to the United States, who did you come here with?
¿Con quién vino a los Estados Unidos cuando vino la primera vez?
Con mi pareja.
With my partner.
Okay. And where did you live first before you came here to Athens?
¿Y dónde vivió usted primero antes de llegar a Athens?
En Queens, Nueva York.
In Queens, New York.
Okay. And while you were there, did you meet the defendant, Jose Ibarra?
Estando entonces allá, ¿conoció usted al acusado, el señor Jose Ibarra?
Sí.
Yes.
And how did you meet him?
¿Cómo fue que lo conoció?
Por medio de la suegra.
Through a mother-in-law.
Did you get to know him well in New York?
¿Lo llegaste a conocer bien en Nueva York?
No, duré como un mes conociéndolo. Pues. Cuando me vine aquí a Athens era como un mes conociéndolo.
No, a month knowing him. When I arrived in Athens, I have known him for a month.
And what do you call him?
¿Y cómo lo llama usted a él?
Víctor.
Victor.
Is that the nickname that other people call him as well?
También otras personas lo llaman a él por ese nombre, ¿sí o no?
Sí.
Yes.
So tell us about coming to Athens. Why did you leave New York to come to Athens?
Cuéntenos sobre el venirse a Athens. ¿Por qué dejó Nueva York para venirse aquí a Athens?
Porque él me dijo que aquí había posibilidad de trabajo, pues el hermano.
Because he told me that there would be a possibility of finding work here. The brother, el hermano.
El hermano de él lo llamaba constante de que aquí había trabajo y por eso fue.
His brother called him constantly, telling him that there was work here. That was why
Por eso fue que nos dirigimos acá.
we decided to come here.
And when you said his brother told you, who are you talking about? Which one of his brothers?
Cuando te refieres a que el hermano les dijo, ¿a cuál de sus hermanos te refieres?
Diego Ibarra.
Diego Ibarra.
And did he have any other brothers that you got to know?
¿Llegaste a conocer a otros hermanos que él tenía?
Argenis Ibarra.
Argenis Ibarra.
And was there anyone else that you got to know that you lived with while you were here in Athens?
¿Alguien más que llegaste a conocer que vivió con ustedes aquí en Athens?
Giancarlo Hernández.
Giancarlos Hernández.
And how did you get to Athens?
¿Y cómo llegaron a Athens?
En Nueva York pedimos en Manhattan.
In New York, we asked in Manhattan,
En el Hotel Roosevelt.
and Hotel Roosevelt.
De Manhattan pedimos un vuelo humanitario aquí hasta
And
acá, hasta Atlanta.
in Manhattan, we requested for a humanitarian flight to come here to Atlanta.
And when was that?
¿Y cuándo fue eso?
Como de 9 a 10 de septiembre.
Around the 9th, 10th of September.
And where did you go when you arrived in Athens?
Y cuando llegó a Athens, ¿a dónde fue?
Al aeropuerto Airport.
To the airport.
Al aeropuerto de Atlanta.
Airport.
Jackson Airport.
Atlanta Airport, Jackson Airport.
And then you came to Athens?
Y luego llegaron y se vinieron a Athens.
Nos fue a recoger un amigo de Diego Ibarra.
A friend of Diego Ibarra came over to pick us up.
And where did you live when you were in Athens?
¿Y dónde entonces terminaron viviendo cuando llegaron a Athens?
A donde a él lo arrestaron.
Where he was arrested.
Was that the Argo Apartments?
Interpreter requires a repetition.
Was that the Argo Apartments?
Los apartamentos Argo.
Creo.
¿Sí o no?
Sí, a donde a él lo arrestaron. No me sé el nombre de...
Yes, where he was arrested. I do not know the name.
Do you remember if it was apartment D126?
¿Recuerda si era el apartamento D126?
Sí.
Yes.
So who got the apartment? Do you know who secured the apartment for everyone?
¿Quién consiguió el apartamento? ¿Quién lo alquiló para todos?
Argenis Ibarra. Estaba a nombre de Argenis.
Argenis Ibarra. It was under Argenis.
So when you arrived, when you and Jose arrived to Athens, who was already living in the
Cuando
apartment?
usted llegó con José, ¿quiénes ya estaban en Athens en ese apartamento?
Diego solamente.
Only Diego.
Okay. And then when did Juan Carlos join you at the apartment?
¿Y cuándo fue que Giancarlo se unió a ustedes en el apartamento?
Como a mediados de noviembre.
Like around the middle of November.
And did you work while you were here in Athens? Were you able to find work?
¿Trabajó usted cuando estuvo aquí en Athens? ¿Pudo conseguir trabajo?
Sí.
Yes.
And where did you work?
¿Y dónde trabajó?
En Wendy.
In Wendy's.
And how many hours did you work every day? Did you work every other day?
¿Cuántas horas? ¿Trabajabas todos los días? ¿Trabajabas un día sí, un día no?
No, en Wendy tenía 2 días libres.
No. In Wendy's I had 2 free days.
Okay. And that was the only place that you worked when you were here in Athens?
¿Ese fue el único lugar donde trabajó usted aquí en Athens?
No.
No.
Where else did you work?
¿En qué otro lugar
En un
trabajaste?
restaurante coreano.
In a Korean restaurant.
And did any one of your roommates work with you at the Korean restaurant?
¿Y algunos de tus roommates trabajaron contigo en el restaurante coreano?
Sí.
Yes.
Who worked there with you?
¿Quién más trabajó allí contigo?
Argenis Ibarra y José Antonio Ibarra.
Okay.
Argenis Ibarra and Jose Antonio Ibarra.
And you mentioned Jose. Do you see him here in the courtroom?
Mencionaste a José, ¿lo ves aquí en la sala de audiencias?
Sí.
Yes.
Can you tell us, can you point him out telling us what he's wearing?
¿Puedes señalarlo, decirnos qué lleva puesto?
Una camisa de rayas,
Uh,
gris,
A gray striped
y
shirt
un pantalón negro, creo.
and I think a black pants.
Okay, let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant, Jose Antonio Ibarra, as her roommate. And then can you describe the apartment that you lived in?
¿Puedes describirnos por dentro el apartamento en el que vivían?
No era muy grande.
It wasn't too big.
Todos dormíamos en la misma área.
All of us slept in the same area.
José Antonio compartía la cama con Diego Ibarra, el
José-
hermano.
Jose Antonio will share the bed with his brother Diego Ibarra.
Mi persona compartía la cama con Argenis Ibarra.
Myself shared the bed with Argenis Ibarra.
Y Giancarlito dormía en un sofá que estaba allí.
And Jan Carlitos slept in a sofa that was there.
And where was your bed? What wall was your bed on?
Su cama. ¿En qué pared? ¿Dónde estaba su cama?
Entrábamos al departamento de mano izquierda.
Entering the apartment on the left.
Okay. That's where I'm sorry, I didn't hear what she said.
Repítele que no te entendió lo que dijiste.
Entrando al departamento a mano izquierda.
Entering the apartment on the left side.
Antes de llegar a la cocina estaba su cama.
Before making it to the kitchen was the bed there.
The largest bed.
La cama más grande entonces.
Ujú. Que
Okay.
tenía dos colchones.
It had 2 mattresses.
Okay. And then who slept on the sofa?
¿Quién dormía en el sofá?
Giancarlo Hernández.
Giancarlos Hernández.
And who slept on the bed closest to the window?
¿Y quién dormía en la cama cercana a la ventana?
Mi persona con Argenis.
Myself with Argenis.
Okay. And did you guys, did you use nicknames when you talked about each other or talked to each other?
Cuando se hablaban ustedes, conversaban entre ustedes, usaban apodos para referirse a ustedes.
No, él me llamaba gorda.
No, he called me Gorda.
Okay. What did they call Diego?
Y a Diego, ¿cómo lo llamaban?
Diego.
Diego.
Did you ever hear Diego called El Gocho?
¿Escuchaste a Diego ser referido como el Gocho?
Ah, sí, sí. el ocho.
Ah, yes, el Gocho.
And did you ever hear Argenis called Manny?
Y oíste a Argenis llamarlo Manny, o Manny.
Mary.
Manny.
Manny.
Sí.
Yes,
Manny.
Manny.
And then Juan Carlos, was he called Carlito?
Y a Juan Carlos lo llamaban Carlitos.
Giancarlito.
Gian Carlitos.
Giancarlito.
Gian Carlitos.
And who were you closest to when you were living in the apartment?
Viviendo en el apartamento, ¿con quién tenías más intimidad, más cercanía?
Argenis.
Argenis.
And I'm going to talk about the February 22nd, the day of the murder of Laken Riley.
Vamos a hablar entonces del asesinato de Laken Riley que ocurrió el 22 de febrero.
Do you remember what time you woke up that day?
¿Recuerdas ese día a qué hora te despertaste?
Yo me levanté como a las 10, 11 de la mañana.
I woke up around 10 to 11 in the morning.
And what did you do?
¿Y qué hiciste?
What were you doing that day?
¿Qué hiciste ese día?
El día al día antes o cuando fueron que los arrestaron.
Which day? The day before or the day that they came to arrest us?
The day before.
El día anterior.
El día anterior, bueno, me paré como a las 10, 11 de la mañana.
Un momento. The day before I woke up between 10 and 11 in the morning.
Ajá, nos pusimos a hacer, bueno, me puse a hacer comida con Argenis.
I began to cook with Argenis food.
Nos fuimos al trabajo Argenis y mi persona.
Argenis and myself went to work.
Y quedaron Diego y José Antonio quedaron en la casa.
And Diego and Jose Antonio remained at the house.
Were they awake or asleep when you woke up?
Interpreter requires a repetition.
Were they awake or asleep when you woke up?
¿Estaban
that day?
ellos despiertos o
Dormidos.
acostados cuando?
Sí, cuando nosotros nos fuimos a trabajar ellos estaban en la cama acostados.
Asleep, yes. When we left to work, they were in bed sleeping.
And then where was Carlito and Juan Carlos in the apartment that day?
¿Y estaba Juan Carlitos en el apartamento ese día? No.
Okay. And then what time did you return home?
¿A qué hora entonces regresaste a casa ese día?
Como a las 10 de la noche.
Around 10 p.m.
And who was there when you got home at 10 o'clock?
¿Quiénes estaban allí cuando llegaste a las 10?
Todos.
All of them.
And at what point did you learn that someone had been killed near your house?
¿Cuándo fue que te enteraste que alguien había sido asesinado cerca de la casa?
Esa noche.
That night.
And how did you, without saying what they said, how did you find out?
¿Cómo te enteraste de lo que había ocurrido?
Porque yo siempre cuando llegaba de trabajar me sentaba afuera fumando un cigarro.
Because every time I came back from work, I would sit outside to smoke a cigarette.
Y estaba un vecino del frente, un puertorriqueño.
And there was a neighbor from across, Puerto Rican.
Y vi mucho policía.
And I saw a lot of police.
Y le pregunté yo a él qué estaba pasando.
So I asked him what was happening.
Y él me dijo a mí, no, hay un muerto.
And he said to me, no, there is a dead person.
We'll move on. So you,
Sustain the objection.
we'll move on. And so you learned that someone had been killed near your apartment.
Entonces conoció que habían asesinado a alguien cerca del apartamento. ¿Sí?
Sí.
Yes.
Okay. So then you went to bed that night, and when did you wake up the next day?
Entonces se acostó esa noche y al día siguiente, ¿a qué hora se despertó?
No, ese día yo entré y le dije a Argenis, le comenté a Argenis.
No, that day I came back in and I mentioned to Argenis
Lo que estaba pasando.
what was happening.
Argenis le publicó, o sea, lo dijo en voz alta ahí en el departamento.
Argenis mentioned it in a loud voice in the apartment.
Right, you can't say what he.
Un momento, no puedes decir lo que otra persona dijo.
I'll consider that when given instruction.
We'll
And he'll interpret the instruction.
Okay, we'll clean it up.
Thank you.
Okay, you can't say what Argenis said.
No puedes decir lo que otra persona dijo, ¿ok?
Okay, but listening to him, you knew that Argenis knew that something had happened at the apartment.
Entonces, the interpreter requires a repetition.
Listening to Argenis, you knew that something had happened at the apartment.
Entonces, escuchando de Argenis, enteraste que algo había ocurrido en el apartamento.
No.
No.
Yo fui la que le dije a Argenis.
I was the one who told Argenis.
Okay.
Y Argenis comentó en el departamento.
And Argenis mentioned it inside the apartment.
Okay, without saying what he said. But he told everyone else.
Él entonces hizo la mención a todos los demás. ¿Sí o no?
Sí.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And then what did you all do next?
¿Y qué fue lo próximo entonces que hiciste?
Me metí al baño y me acosté a dormir.
I
Was-
went into the bathroom and then I slept.
Okay, was there any reaction from any of your roommates? Not what they said, but did anyone act strange or concerned when they found out that a murder had taken
¿Hubo
place?
alguna reacción sobre tus compañeros de habitación, no sobre lo que Argenis dijo, sino sobre lo que habían conocido, que había ocurrido?
No.
Okay.
No.
And what woke you up the next morning?
¿Qué fue lo que la despertó la mañana siguiente?
Oficiales.
The officers.
How did that happen?
¿Cómo ocurrió?
Entraron y dijeron que nos levantáramos todos.
They entered and they told us, for all of us, to wake up.
Primero agarraron a Argenis,
They first grabbed Argenis.
luego a Diego. No, primero a Diego, luego a Argenis.
No, first Diego, later Argenis.
Y luego entraron al departamento. José Antonio estaba dormido y mi persona también estaba dormida.
Then they entered the apartment. Jose Antonio was asleep and I myself was too asleep.
Y a nosotros dos nos levantaron que saliéramos del departamento.
They awoken both of us, asking us to walk out of the apartment.
After a certain time, did you go down to the Athens Clark County Police Department and give a statement?
Después de haber pasado cierto tiempo, terminó usted siendo llevada al departamento de la policía de Athens Clark y dio usted una declaración.
Sí.
And was
Yes.
that on February 23rd, that same day that they woke you up in your apartment?
Eso fue el mismo día, el 23 de febrero, el que vinieron al
Sí.
apartamento. Yes.
And did you also give a statement to Officer Sayan on March 4th at
También,
Julio Maldonado's apartment?
usted también le dio una declaración al oficial de la policía Sayan el 4 de marzo en el apartamento de Julio, ¿dice Julio Maya?
Maldonado.
Maldonado. Sí.
And did they show you some photographs and video?
Le mostraron algunas fotografías, algunos videos.
And were you able to identify anyone in any of the videos?
¿Pudo usted reconocer en esa fotografía o en esos videos a alguien?
En un video.
En el video.
Okay, I'm going to show you some photographs.
Te van a mostrar ahora unas fotografías aquí en la pantalla.
First, I'm going to ask you about your roommates.
Son preguntas que ya te va a hacer ahora sobre tus compañeros del apartamento.
Okay. Starting with States Exhibit 179. If you could look at the
Mostrando ahí
screen.
entonces la fotografía marcada como 179, prueba de la fiscalía.
Do you recognize that person?
¿Usted puede recuerda esa fotografía?
Do you recognize that person?
¿Reconoce usted a esa persona?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, who is that?
¿Quién es?
Diego Ibarra.
Diego Ibarra.
Thank you. And is that who you called El Gocho?
A él es a quien llaman el gocho. El gocho.
And States Exhibit 185. Who is that?
Estoy mostrando la fotografía de la fiscalía 185. ¿Quién es él?
Argenis Ibarra.
Okay.
Argenis Ibarra.
Is that Manny?
Menes.
Ese es Manny.
And who is that?
¿Quién es esta?
José Antonio Ibarra.
José Antonio Ibarra.
Okay. And Your Honor, if we could toggle over, I'm going to show her some video.
Te van a mostrar ahora un video.
I'm going to toggle over to, let's see, 30 seconds. Do you recognize anyone in that video?
¿Reconoce usted a alguien en ese video?
Who do you see in that video?
¿A quién ve usted en el video?
José Antonio Ibarra.
José Antonio Ibarra.
And how do you recognize him?
¿Cómo sabes que es él? ¿Cómo lo reconoces?
Por la gorra
The
y la-
cap
y las cholas.
and the loafers.
Okay. When you say cholas, how can you describe them?
Cuando dices la palabra cholas, ¿qué son?
Sandalias.
Like sandals?
Chanclas.
Chanclas?
Okay. Can you translate the word chanclas?
The interpreter only can translate the word that she is referring to. Chanclas.
Would you say the word flip-flops?
Serían como las chancletas que usan aquí.
Sí.
Yes.
And do you remember talking to the officers and thinking about something that you saw in that video that I just showed you?
¿Recuerdas haber conversado con los oficiales sobre el video y lo que habías visto?
Mm.
How?
Okay. Did you remember? Oh, let me rephrase my question. Did you notice or recognize an article of clothing in that video?
Ella te rehace la pregunta. ¿Reconociste algo de la ropa de la persona que llevaba en ese video puesta?
Sí, la gorra, las
Yes.
chanclas.
The cap, the sandals.
Did you see what he was putting into the dumpster? Did you
¿Viste
see an
lo
item?
que estaba poniendo en el contenedor de basura?
What did you see?
¿Qué vistes?
Un suéter.
A sweater.
Okay. And had you seen that sweater before?
¿Habías visto ese suéter anteriormente?
Tell us about that sweater.
Sí.
When did you see it?
Yes. Dinos sobre el suéter. ¿Cuándo lo vistes?
Desde que me vine de Nueva York.
Since I came from New York.
Had you seen Jose Ibarra wear that sweater?
¿Habías visto a José Ibarra ponerse ese suéter?
Sí.
Yes.
Did you have any thoughts about him throwing that sweater into the dumpster?
Objection.
Moment.
Did you mention anything?
So I'll sustain the objection.
Did you mention any to the law enforcement officers anything about that sweater that you thought strange?
¿Le hiciste algún comentario a los oficiales policiales sobre ese suéter que vistes en el video? No.
Okay. When you saw Jose throwing this sweater into the dumpster, what did you think about that? Or what did you notice?
Judge, I'm also going to object because I don't know that this witness was not there to see the activity that's depicted on the video. The court is equally able to interpret the video shows.
I'll overrule the objection as to what she might have noticed.
Did it seem strange to you that Jose was throwing that jacket away?
¿Te pareció extraño a ti que estaba José botando, tirando esa chaqueta?
Sí.
Yes.
And you called it the item a sweater. Was it worn as a sweater or as a jacket?
El suéter se lo ponía a él más que como un suéter, lo usaba como una chaqueta. Okay. Like a jacket.
And then talking about the hat, was it unusual for the brothers to exchange clothing?
Hablando sobre el sombrero o la cachucha, era inusual que los hermanos, you said, interpreter requires the end, you said.
Was it
brother?
unusual for the brothers to share clothing?
Era inusual que los hermanos intercambiaran, se pusieran la ropa.
Sí. Sí, se intercambiaban ambos, Diego y José Antonio.
Yes, they would interchange it. Diego and José Antonio would.
They would wear each other's clothes?
Se ponían entonces la misma ropa. Yes.
And for the record, I did want to identify that video as the UFB 32 dumpster video from Exhibit 172. I think that's all I have. And with that, I will pass the witness.
Te van a interrogar ahora ellos.
While he's doing that, let me, some of this has been cleared up, but if you would instruct the witness that she needs to answer out loud, yes or no, not shake heads.
El juez quiere aclarar algo, ¿no? Cuando te pidan que respondas, no respondas con mover la cabeza. Siempre responde verbalmente, sí o no, siempre. Okay. Excuse me for that. No problem.
Good morning.
Dice, señor, buenos días. Good morning.
I want to follow up with just a few questions, please.
Quiero entonces hacerle solo algunas pocas preguntas, por favor.
So you were asked a minute ago about when you first came to the U.S., right?
Hace unos minutos le preguntaron cuándo fue que vino por primera vez a los Estados Unidos, ¿correcto? ¿Sí o no?
Sí.
Yes.
And am I right that you came in the summer of 2023?
¿Es correcto decir que usted llegó en el verano del 2023?
En mayo,
In May the 3rd.
Thank you. And that was, you went directly to New York City?
Y fue directamente a Nueva York.
no, estaba en El Paso.
No, in El Paso I was.
Okay. But you didn't stay there long, is that what I understand?
Pero yo entiendo que no se quedó allí mucho tiempo.
No.
No.
And so the first place that you stayed for any period of time was New York City, is that right?
Entonces es correcto decir que el primer lugar donde estuvo por algún periodo de tiempo fue Nueva York.
Sí.
Yes.
Okay. And then during the summer of 2023, you met first Maylene Franco, is that right?
Y durante el verano del 2023 conoció usted primero a Maylene Blanco, ¿es correcto?
Sí.
Yes.
And Maylene's daughter is Laken Franco, correct?
Y la hija de Maylene es Leili Franco, ¿correcto?
Lailín Franco.
¿Perdón?
Lailín.
Lailín Franco.
Laylene, thank you.
Gracias.
And Laylene was married to Jose Antonio Ibarra.
Y Lailín está casada con José Antonio Ibarra. Sí, yes.
And I'm just trying to establish how you met Jose Antonio.
Yo
Is that,
solamente estoy tratando de establecer cómo fue que conoció usted a José Antonio. Okay.
but it was first through his mother-in-law, Maylene Franco, right?
Así que primero fue a través de la suegra de él, Maylene Franco, ¿correcto?
Sí.
Yes.
Okay. And the way I understand it, your friend and Laylene lived in a hotel that was turned into an apartment for immigrants.
De la manera como lo he entendido es que usted y Laylene vivieron en un hotel que luego fue transformado allá como en un complejo de apartamentos.
No.
No.
Where was Laylene living at the time?
¿En dónde vivía Laylene?
En el Crown Plaza.
En Crown Plaza,
Queen.
Queens.
Crown Plaza, that had been a hotel but was now an apartment.
El
Was
Crown.
used to as a place for migrants to live.
El Crown Plaza, que después fue transformado como un lugar de apartamentos usado para entonces darle vivienda a los inmigrantes que llegaron.
Sí.
Yes.
And at some point during that summer, you and Jose Antonio, well, first of all, let me interrupt. Did you call him Jose Antonio or did you call him Victor?
Entonces, en un momento en ese verano, usted y José Antonio, discúlpeme que le interrumpa, ¿usted lo llamaba a él José Antonio o usted lo llamaba a él Víctor? Víctor.
So at some point during that summer, did you and Victor end up living in a car for a few weeks?
Durante ese verano, por algún tiempo, terminó Víctor, ustedes viviendo dentro de un carro por algunas semanas.
Sí.
Yes.
Okay. And the car was parked near the Crown Plaza.
Y el carro estaba estacionado cerca del Crown Plaza.
Sí, al frente.
Yes. Across.
Across the street.
Yeah. cruzando la calle.
No, la acera estaba estacionada.
No.
Saliendo al crono.
Right by the sidewalk, the car was parked there, just walking out of the crown.
And through Victor, you learned that his brother Diego was in Athens.
Y a través de Víctor conociste que Diego, su hermano, estaba en Athens.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Excuse me. And Diego had invited Victor to come to Athens to get out of New York.
Y Diego había invitado a Víctor que se viniera a Athens para salir de Nueva York.
Porque aquí había oportunidades de trabajo.
Because here there were work opportunities.
And then Victor also mentioned to you, why don't you come also?
Y también Víctor te lo mencionó a ti para que también diciéndote, ven también tú.
Sí.
Yes.
And so that's how the two of you ended up flying down to Atlanta and then getting a ride over to Athens.
Así que así fue como entonces terminaron volando a Atlanta y de Atlanta consiguieron una carrerita hasta Athens.
Sí.
Yes.
And at that time, in D-126, it was just Diego there at the time.
Y en aquel momento, para the interpreter requires a repetition, you mentioned a date.
It was only Diego who was living in the apartment when you first arrived?
Diego entonces era la única persona que vivía en ese apartamento cuando llegaste allá.
Sí.
Yes.
Argenis was living in Florida?
Argenis estaba viviendo en Florida.
Yes.
Yes.
How was your English?
¿Cómo era tu inglés?
Muy poco.
Very little.
So that you got a job at Wendy's at first?
¿Y tu primer trabajo te lo dieron en Wendy's?
Yes.
Yes.
And Victor also?
¿Y Víctor también?
Yes.
Yes.
Argenis came maybe in October, September, October?
Argenis se vino como en octubre, septiembre, octubre.
Noviembre.
November.
And then Argenis, the three of you got the job at the Korean restaurant?
Y los tres de ustedes consiguieron trabajar en el restaurante coreano.
Yes.
Yes.
And was the name of it Utaji?
El nombre Utachi.
En realidad no recuerdo el nombre.
In reality, I don't remember the name.
Queda aquí atrás.
It's right behind here.
And you didn't use any gloves when you worked there, did you?
¿Tú no utilizabas guantes cuando trabajaste allí?
No.
No.
And then it was a little bit later after Argenis came to live in D-126. John Carlos came.
Un poquito después de que Argenis llegó a vivir en el apartamento de 126, llegó entonces Giancarlos.
No, primero llegó Giancarlitos.
No, Giancarlitos first arrived.
Después bajó Argenis de Florida.
After Argenis came from Florida.
And is John Carlitos, is he related to the brothers?
Giancarlito está relacionado, tiene parentesco con los hermanos.
Bueno, que se conocían desde allá, desde donde vivían en Venezuela.
Only that they knew each other from where they all are from in Venezuela.
Más allá no sé.
More from them, I do not know.
And Diego, you identified Diego in a picture, but let me just ask you, he is a little bit taller than Victor, correct?
Tú identificaste a Diego en una fotografía, pero déjame preguntarte, él es un poquito más alto que, you said, Diego is a little bit taller.
A little taller than Victor.
más alto que Víctor.
Sí, un poco.
Yes, a little bit.
And at the time, anyway, Diego was thinner than Victor.
Y para aquel momento Diego era más flaco.
Sí.
Yes.
And that morning, you testified that Thursday morning of February 22nd,
Esa mañana de febrero, el jueves 22 de febrero,
you woke up after 10 but before 11, as I understand it?
entiendo que se despertó después de las 10, pero antes de las 11, ¿correcto? ¿Sí o no?
Yes.
Yes.
And when you woke up in your bed, Diego and Victor were both asleep in their bed, correct?
Y cuando usted se despertó, estando en su cama, Diego y Víctor estaban dormidos todavía en sus camas.
Sí.
Yes.
And you didn't notice anything that morning as far as anyone leaving the apartment?
Y usted esa mañana no se dio cuenta con respecto a cualquiera de alguien salir del apartamento. No.
That's all, thank you.
Esas son todas las preguntas que le quiere hacer.
You redirect, Mr. Jackson?
Pregunta a la señora Jackson si te va a hacer otras preguntas.
Nothing further.
All right.
No hay ninguna otra pregunta. Estás excusada.
Any objection to excusing her, Mr. Diamond?
No objection.
Okay.
Ok, no hay ninguna
You may
objeción.
go down.
Ok, eso es todo. Entonces puedes salir.
Gracias.
You're welcome.
Now call your next witness.
State call Special Agent Jamie Hicks. And while Special Agent Hipkiss is entering the room, Your Honor, we do have another stipulation of the parties. It has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 267, and we are going to move to admit State's 267. It is a stipulation of fact regarding FBI agent Candace Hunter. FBI Digital Forensic Examiner Candace Hunter testified at a motion to suppress in the above referenced case on November 1st of 2024. All parties agreed to admit her testimony and exhibits from that testimony at this trial, and they will be made a part of this trial record. Furthermore, the parties hereby stipulate that Candace Hunter extracted the data from the cellular telephones with the FBI evidence labels of 1B7, 1B8, and 1B11 using Cellubrite Premium. It is signed by myself and counsel for the defendant, and again, we're moving to admit 267. I will say that transcript is not in our possession at this time, but when the transcript is complete, we will go ahead and mark that testimony of Ms. Hunter's, or Agent Hunter's, excuse me, and move to admit that and make that part of the record. But we have agreed to accept her testimony and stipulate to her testimony.
I concur with Ms. Ross.
Very well. It's admitted based on the stipulation.
Raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you will give today in the matter of the state of Georgia versus Jose Ibarra will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You could please state and spell your first and last name for Madam Court Reporter.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Jamie, Jamie. Last name is Hipkiss, Hipkiss.
What do you do for a living?
I'm employed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation as a special agent, and I'm assigned to the Athens, Georgia office.
How long have you worked for the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
It'll be 11 years in February.
At the Athens office, what do you do? What types of crimes do you investigate, and what do you do there?
I'm assigned to the Middle Georgia Safe Streets Gang Task Force. That's a task force comprised of several different agencies, FBI, obviously, as well as the GBI, the Athens Clark County Police Department, the Oconee County Sheriff's Office, and the Georgia Department of Corrections. As a member of that task force, our primary mission is to focus on investigations that involve violent criminal activity or violent gang activity or major organized crime investigations. So as a part of that, we oftentimes assist our state and local law enforcement partners with investigations such as this that involve violent crime or a murder or armed robbery or something of that nature.
When and how did you get involved into the investigation into the murder of Laken Riley?
I got involved on the day that it occurred on February 22nd, 2024. I was actually contacted by another member of our task force who's a sergeant with the Athens Clark County Police Department. When the incident happened, I was actually in Atlanta dealing with another matter, and I was informed by Sergeant Frost, who's on our task force, that he was involved and had responded to the murder of a college student that had occurred on the University of Georgia campus, and advised that he would be meeting with other law enforcement partners to obtain information to see if there was any assistance our task force could provide.
Did you at some point provide assistance to the local authorities in this case, and specifically, what was the focus of your investigation?
Yeah, so initially on February 22nd, there were no suspects when the incident occurred. So at that time, we took the role of helping out with some cell phone analysis. We did what's called tower dumps in the area, or I assisted with that in writing search warrants to essentially capture all cellular devices that were in contact with the towers that served the area where the crime scene was located at. So that was our initial involvement. From there, it evolved into other technical assistance. Once University of Georgia Police Department and the GBI and Athens Clark County Police Department had identified a suspect and executed a search warrant. They had collected a total of 11 electronic devices. At that point in time, they asked for the FBI's assistance in downloading those particular devices.
And is that when you got involved?
Yes.
For the devices. So specifically, did you review the downloads of devices 1B7, 1B8, and 1B11 in this case?
Yes, I did.
If you could first tell us what are 1B7, 1B8, and 1B11, why are they numbered that way, but whose devices are they?
1B7 and 1B8 are devices that belong to Jose Antonio Ibarra, the defendant seated at the table over there in the gray dress shirt.
And may the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant.
1B11 is a device that was collected from Jose's brother, Diego Ibarra, when Athens Clark County Police Department encountered him on the morning of February 23rd at approximately 8:32 in the morning.
But who extracted data from those devices?
Special Agent Candace Hunter, she's assigned to the FBI CART team, that's a computer analysis and response team. She's a certified digital forensic examiner, so the phones were taken down to her in Atlanta and she extracted the data from all three devices.
And then you reviewed that data?
That's correct. And to answer your question about 1B7, 1B8, and 1B11, so that's just a naming convention used by the FBI when it comes to evidence. So in this case, 1B7 was a Samsung 14 phone that was located in the apartment of Mr. Ibarra, apartment D126, during the execution of the search warrant. 1B8 is a Samsung 13 phone that was also located in the apartment, and then 1B11, as I mentioned, was collected from Diego Ibarra.
I'm handing you three pieces of evidence. One is marked 263, one is marked 264, and one is marked states 265. Do you recognize all three of those items?
Yes, I do.
What are they? And just take them by number, please.
Yes, 1B7 is a copy of the cell phone extraction that was generated by Special Agent Hunter. I know that this particular exhibit is a copy of that because I personally reviewed it and created it. 1B8 would be a copy of the Samsung 13 cell phone collected from Jose Ibarra's apartment, and then 1B11 would be a copy of the Motorola cell phone seized from Diego Ibarra. And again, I created these thumb drives, these copies, so I'm familiar with all three of them.
State would move to admit 264, 265, and 266.
I'm
Okay.
gonna object, I need to approach Your Honor about this issue with Ms. Ross.
All right. Let me
What I understand we just discussed is that I do not object to these exhibits being admitted just to preserve the entire cell phone extraction for the record. However, we are objecting to the entire cell phone record being used as a fact finder in this case. And so Ms. Ross is going to go through with Agent Hipkiss the parts she wants you to consider. And I will maintain my objection to considering the other parts of the cell phone extraction.
That is, excuse me, Your Honor, that is correct. There are many items on these phones that will not be, that we do not want the fact finder to consider in this case. And from the state's perspective, the only parts of these phones that we would like the court to consider and that the fact finder should consider are contained in a PowerPoint, which we're going to admit, which would be State's Exhibit 266. So 266 will contain only the data and information from the phones that the state wishes the fact finder to consider. The full extractions were just admitted to perfect the record of other than.
All right. So 263, 264, and 265 will be admitted based on the announcement made for purpose of preserving the record, but I will only review or consider what is going to be contained in 266.
Yes, Your Honor.
And any exhibit that the defense may produce on those records if it's admitted. Yes, sir.
All right.
So I'm going to hand you a bunch of other items, and we're going to just go one at a time so that the record is clear. Can I have those back?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. 266, what is that?
266 is a copy of a PowerPoint presentation that I created that summarizes the downloads of several different records involved in this investigation. The first being the download of Jose Ibarra's cell phone, which has been named FBI evidence item 1B7. It also involves the T-Mobile subscriber records for phone number 347-358-3978, and that is the phone number assigned to 1B7. The PowerPoint also includes records for Cash App account Jose Antonio 251998, which is a Cash App account, used by Mr. Ibarra. It also includes Snapchat records with the username user374159-156, which is a Snapchat account used by Mr. Ibarra. Google account records with the Gmail account, or the Google account, Jose Ibarra 251998 @gmail.com, and that is a Google account used by Mr. Ibarra. Additionally, the PowerPoint includes records from TikTok for account Victor Franco 4, as well as a summary of the download of FBI evidence item 1B7, which is a summary of the Motorola cell phone collected from Diego Ibarra on February 23rd.
Hold on, let me stop you right there. You just said 1B7? What's the Motorola?
Excuse me, 1B11.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
All right, go ahead.
And then also additionally, Verizon and track phone records for cell phone number 404-416-5213, which was the phone number that was associated with FBI evidence item 1B11, the Motorola cell phone.
Which was identified as belonging to Diego Ibarra?
Yes, sir.
And is that a report that you created yourself?
Yes, it is.
Based on the records and the information that you just told us?
Yes, ma'am.
The state would move to admit States 266.
Your Honor, I don't object to most of the PowerPoint. I do have an objection to some slides, and I will specify for the record that is slide 22, and in addition, slides 25 and 26. These 3 slides contain lyrics from songs that were supposedly being played, and I think there's a couple problems with this. Number one, I don't think they're relevant. Number 2, we've got a confrontation clause issue here. I don't know who translated these lyrics from Spanish to English. I don't think it was Agent Hipkiss. And then number 3 is, a hearsay issue with that as well.
Your Honor, the translation was done by an analyst who will be testifying this afternoon right behind this particular agent. So if he wishes to question her about how well she can speak Spanish, then that's the issue will be solved, because she's going to be here. I'm sorry, I missed the last thing you said.
The first thing was relevance, and then confrontation and hearsay.
Well, the relevance of it is that it goes to the defendant's state of mind, and this is the one. Can you show me the picture? We can clear that up with this agent, but those are basically statements of a defendant. These are defendant's lyrics out of the defendant's phone, right before, within hours of the murder.
I disagree that lyrics on a song that was not written by the defendant, even if it was located on his phone, can be considered statements of the defendant.
Well, he's posting them, so he's adopting them. So yes, these are statements or posts done by this defendant hours before the murder that go directly to his state of mind. And so it's an adoptive admission because he's adopted them and posting them.
And I think you'll be able to argue that. So I'm going to overrule the objection on confrontation and relevancy, and I will continue the objection matter related to translation.
I'm going to approach again with a bunch of the documents that you mentioned are in States 266, and now that 266 is in, I'm going to take that back, and we're going to publish 266 on the Elmo, Your Honor. If you could toggle over, and we'll just do it from the PowerPoint slides one at a time. But before we get into the publication of 266, I have a bunch of other documents to show you. So States 248 through 259, let's start with those. Look at those for us. Do you recognize those items?
Yes, I do.
And in general terms, what are they?
There are business record certifications provided by the respective either cell phone or social media providers that I referenced.
And for the record, Your Honor, the state did file 2 different pretrial notices of our intent to rely upon certain business records Those business records, those are the certifications of those records that the state provided pretrial notice on, not all of them, but the ones that are at least contained within states 266, which is Special Agent Hickes's report. So we would move to admit the certifications at 248 through 259 at this time.
I don't have objection other than preserving my objections from the motion to suppress, Your Honor.
248 through 259 are admitted. Objections noted.
States 260, what is that?
I'm not recognizing this since it's not labeled. It's a thumb drive, I'm
Look at
assuming.
that.
Okay.
That's your label on the back.
Oh, yeah.
Look.
Yeah, that's from some.
Yeah.
What
Is that your label on
yes,
the back?
Yes, okay. This is going to be a thumb drive containing Snapchat, TikTok, Google, and Cash App records that accompany the business record certifications that we just discussed.
And are those records that you obtained pursuant to your investigation?
Yes.
In this case, and did you obtain all of those records with either search warrants or subpoenas?
Yes.
Either state or federal,
Yes.
depending on what the record was?
Yes.
Okay, the state would move to admit states 260.
Similarly to earlier, Your Honor, I don't think everything on these records is relevant or admissible, but if they're just wanting to publish the parts that are in the slideshow, I don't have an objection to being entered for the record.
She's correct. We do not believe everything in these records would be admissible for the fact finder to consider. They're to preserve the record of all the records that were received by the FBI and this agent, and what we would like the fact finder to consider are only the records that will be talked about in states 266.
So the 260 will be admitted with that reservation.
261 and 262. What are those items one at a time?
Government's Exhibit 261 is a thumb drive containing Verizon records that are associated with the cell phone, the Motorola cell phone that was seized from Diego Ibarra.
And the state would move to admit that. Again, those records, states 261.
Sorry, just one moment, Your Honor. We don't have objection to the record for 1B11.
Which is 261.
Well, those are actually just the records, the CDRs from 1B11. 1B11 itself is a different exhibit.
Yes, we don't have objection to the CDRs from 1B11. And that's, I believe, 262 or.
That is 261 for the record.
All right, 261 is admitted.
262.
Government's Exhibit 262 is a thumb drive containing the CDRs for the phone number, as well as location information for the number that was assigned to FBI evidence item 1B7, so Jose Ibarra's Samsung 14 cell phone.
And the state would move to admit states 262.
I'd like to preserve my motion to suppress argument, otherwise I move.
Subject to preserving that objection, 262 is admitted.
And for the CDRs, first of all, what is a CDR?
CDR is call detail records, so that is information that's provided by the respective cell phone company that essentially breaks down the details related to a call. So for instance, if it's an incoming call, it's going to say the time that the call occurred, what number called the target phone number, at what time, and how long the duration is.
What is timing advance data, and did you obtain timing advance records from Verizon, who was the provider for the cell phone 1B7?
Yes, we did. So we obtained records from T-Mobile and Verizon. So timing advance records are essentially engineering data that's captured by the cell phone provider. So on top of timing advance, we will get cell site records, right? So a lot of people are probably already familiar with those because they've been around for a long time. And so cell site records, each tower is generally broken up into 3 sectors. And so the cell phone company is able to tell us pursuant to legal process, like, hey, the respective phone that you're looking at is hitting this particular tower and it's located within this sector, which is generally like a pie shape. Timing advance data takes that a little bit further. Like I said, it's engineering data collected by the phone company, and the purpose for the phone company collecting this information is to essentially like make a better signal for the user. And so it essentially, it sends a signal from the tower to the phone, and then from the phone back to the tower, and the cell phone provider captures that information. And based on the time that it takes for the information to be sent to the phone and then back to the tower, they're able to further narrow down that pie shape to essentially, we call it like a hot dog or a rainbow shape. So it's more precise information on the location of that phone than the traditional cell site information.
Did you obtain timing advance data for the cell phone number associated with Jose Ibarra, also the cell phone number associated with 1B7?
Yes.
And who was the provider for that particular timing advance data?
T-Mobile.
And is that the data that was contained or is contained on stage 262 that we just admitted?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So now let's turn to your exhibit 266. And I apologize, we're just having a little PowerPoint issue, so you'll have to bear with me. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. We'll try to do it in PowerPoint format. I know it's not ideal. Can the court see it and can counsel see it? Thank you. Let's start with 266, page 1, slide 1. What are we looking at here?
Again, this is what I covered earlier. This is just a summary of the records that were used to create this PowerPoint. So it's highlighting the fact that we used records from the download of FBI evidence item 1B7, as well as the T-Mobile records that we just discussed for the phone number assigned to 1B7, Jose Ibarra's Cash App records, his Snapchat records, and his Google account records.
Slide number 2.
Again, this is just further information related to the records that are contained within this PowerPoint presentation. This is showing that we also use TikTok records for Jose Ibarra's account with the screen name Victor Franco 4, as well as records from the download of Diego Ibarra's phone, evidence item 1B11, and additionally the Verizon and track phone records for the phone number that was assigned to 1B11.
Did Jose Ibarra use a different name at times in social media?
Yes, he did. A
What's that name?
common alias that we saw Mr. Ibarra use was Victor Franco.
And how do you spell Victor Franco for the record?
Victor is V-I-C-T-O-R. Franco is F-R-A-N-C-O.
Thank you. So now looking at your slide number 3, what is that?
That's just a highlight to the court for 1B7, so the Samsung 14 cell phone seized from Mr. Ibarra's apartment that was used by him. The records, when they were produced and then when they were extracted from the phone, they are in UTC time. So this is just showing to the court how you would translate UTC time to local Eastern Standard Time. And on February 24, 2024, the day that the murder occurred, as is highlighted in this slide, you'll see that you have to subtract 5 hours from what's shown in the record. So for example, this particular text message is showing February 22nd, 2024 at 11:36 p.m. That would translate to 6:36 p.m. local time.
Slide number 4, what are we looking at there?
This is just highlighting the device identifiers associated with Mr. Ibarra's 1B7 phone. So as I stated, it's a Samsung Galaxy phone 14 with the actual model number being SM-A146U. It was assigned cell phone number 347-358-3978, as well as IMEI or a device identifier of 35295-824-449-1604.
What is an IMEI?
It's an international mobile equipment number, so that'll be specific to the actual cell phone itself. It's essentially like the equipment number, so it's essentially like a serial number related to the cell phone.
And we see that sadly, the PowerPoint that we have, a copy of it is in black and white, so we can't see the colors. What color you've seen the color image of this?
Yes.
Of this photograph that we see on slide 4?
Yeah, so since it is in black and white, I can provide further description. So the actual image...
Your Honor, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think we are going to have a best evidence objection to this. I sympathize with the state's technical issues, and I'm happy to take a break for them to fix it, but I think rather than having the witness describe the content of the photos, the court should just see the photo.
I think it is best for the court to view the photos, so if we could take a break to fix our technical issues, but for the best evidence rule, that's why the records are in. So the records themselves are in, so that, the records are part of the record. But if you could give us a moment to try to fix our issue, perhaps, it would be better for the court and everyone to see the images in color.
So, I don't know the nature of the problem. Is this something that will
So
take
we're
5
missing,
minutes, or-
it's 5 minutes. We're missing one thumb drive that was recopied this morning, and I think I have the old version of it. I need the new version of it that was recopied. And so if you could give us 5 minutes to either find it in our, again, 17,000 thumb drives that we have, or we can recopy it very quickly, because I know he has it, and so he can give me a new copy of it, because the recopy version is lost.
I'll let you do that.
Thank you. May the witness step down.
Yes.
you can use it as long as you have an internet connection. It's frequently used by individuals who maybe have relatives in other countries. It's a very easy method to communicate. So it's a common method of communication that we see.
What are we looking at here in your next slide, which is 10?
So this is a photograph on Jose's WhatsApp account that was recovered from his phone, where he appears to be editing his bank account. You could see in his name